The autumn chill nips at my fingers as I grip the steering wheel of the stationary training car, my knuckles white with anxiety. I've put off getting my license for far too long, and at 30, it feels almost embarrassing to be here at Stockton's premier driving school, surrounded by teenagers fresh out of high school. Remember, mirrors first, the instructor drones from the passenger seat. I nod mechanically, my attention suddenly caught by movement in my rearview mirror. A tall blonde woman strides across the parking lot, her confident gait making heads turn. She's wearing a structured blazer that screams professional, paired with well-worn work boots that hint at something more interesting. I watch as she enters the classroom building, momentarily forgetting about my mirror checks until the instructor clears his throat. Right. Driving. That's why I'm here. Later, during the classroom portion, I find myself seated 2 rows behind the blonde. Her hair catches the fluorescent lights, creating a halo effect that's oddly mesmerizing. The instructor's going on about traffic regulations, but I'm more focused on the way she takes notes, her movements precise and deliberate. Leslie Murphy? The instructor's voice snaps me back to reality. Could you explain the right-of-way rules at a 4-way stop? I feel my face flush. Well, first to arrive, first to go, comes a smooth voice from 2 rows ahead. The blonde half turns, throwing me a conspiratorial wink. Unless 2 arrive simultaneously, then the right has priority. Thank you, Ms. Diaz, the instructor says dryly. But I was asking Ms. Murphy. During break time, I'm trying to balance my coffee and course materials when someone bumps into me from behind. The coffee sloshes over the rim, thankfully missing my clothes but creating a small puddle on the floor. Oh damn, I'm so sorry. It's her, the blonde from class. Up close, her eyes are startlingly blue, like a clear winter sky. Here, let me help. She pulls some tissues from her bag, dropping to one knee to mop up the spill. I'm Amber, she says, standing up. Amber Diaz. And you're Leslie, right? I nod, still a bit flustered. The one who couldn't remember right-of-way rules. She laughs, and it's a rich, warm sound that seems to fill the sterile classroom. Don't worry about it. I only knew because I've been studying like crazy. I restore historic buildings for a living, and my current project site is across town. Public transit's killing me. Historic buildings? I perk up. That must be fascinating. I'm actually a miniature model artist. Her eyes light up. No way. Like those incredibly detailed dollhouses? More varied than that, I explain, feeling myself relax into the conversation. I do architectural models, scene reconstructions, sometimes even movie set miniatures. That's incredible, she says, and there's genuine interest in her voice. I'd love to see your work sometime. Maybe it could help with my visualizations for restoration projects. The second bell rings, signaling the end of break. As we head back to our seats, Amber turns to me with a small smile. Hey, want to grab coffee after class? Real coffee, not the stuff you just spilled? Something warm blooms in my chest, something that has nothing to do with the spilled coffee or the autumn chill outside. I'd like that, I reply. And I mean it more than I probably should. The rest of the class passes in a blur of traffic signs and regulations, but my mind keeps drifting to blue eyes and the promise of coffee. Maybe learning to drive at 30 isn't such a bad thing after all. Sometimes the best journeys start with a simple first step, or in my case, a spilled cup of coffee and a chance encounter in driving school. Turn the wheel harder, Leslie. Amber's voice carries across the empty parking lot where we're practicing parallel parking for the 100th time. The evening sun casts long shadows across the pavement, and I'm fighting with the steering wheel of my newly purchased used car. I'm trying, I call back, but the car ends up at an awkward angle, nowhere near the curb. I let my head fall against the steering wheel with a defeated thud. Amber walks over, her boots clicking against the asphalt. Mind if I show you something? She opens my door and I slide over to the passenger seat. The subtle scent of her perfume fills the car as she adjusts the mirrors. Watch this, she says, executing a perfect parking maneuver. Her movements are fluid, confident. It's all about timing and angles. You're overthinking it. We spend the next hour practicing, and with each attempt, I get a little better. Amber's patience seems endless, her instructions clear and encouraging. As the sun sets, casting an orange glow across the Stockton skyline, we decide to call it a day. Want a ride home? I offer, feeling more confident behind the wheel. It's the least I can do after you spent your evening teaching me. She smiles, that warm, genuine smile that's become familiar over the past few weeks. Sure, but let's grab dinner first. I'm starving. Over plates of pasta at a small Italian restaurant, our conversation flows easily. Amber tells me about her latest restoration project, a Victorian-era mansion that's been neglected for decades. Her eyes light up when she describes the original woodwork she's discovered beneath layers of paint. It's like peeling back time, she explains, twirling spaghetti around her fork. Each layer tells a story. That's exactly how I feel about my miniatures, I reply. Every tiny detail adds to the narrative. The drive home becomes our new routine. After each driving lesson, we find ourselves extending our time together. Coffee stops, dinner breaks, long conversations in my parked car outside her apartment building. I learn that she loves jazz music and collects vintage tools. She discovers my secret passion for baking and my terrible habit of staying up all night when inspiration strikes. One evening, after a particularly successful driving session, Amber hesitates before getting out of the car. "I'd love to see your workshop sometime," she says. "You keep talking about these miniatures, but I've yet to see them in person." My heart skips a beat. My workshop is my sanctuary, my most private space. But something about Amber makes me want to share it. "How about now?" I suggest, surprising myself. "It's just a few blocks away." My workshop is a converted garage behind my house, filled with half-finished projects and tiny, intricate pieces. Amber moves through the space carefully, examining each miniature with genuine interest. She stops at my current project, a scale model of an old theater. "This is incredible," she breathes, leaning in to peer at the tiny architectural details. "The craftsmanship, it's amazing." She's standing so close I can feel the warmth radiating from her body. When she turns to face me, our faces are inches apart. The workshop suddenly feels very small, very intimate. My heart is pounding so loud I'm sure she can hear it. "Leslie," she says softly, her blue eyes searching mine. The moment stretches between us, electric with possibility. Then she closes the distance, her lips meeting mine in a gentle kiss that feels both surprising and inevitable. When we break apart, the workshop is silent except for our slightly uneven breathing. Outside, a car alarm goes off in the distance, breaking the spell. Amber steps back, but her hand finds mine in the dim light. "I've wanted to do that for weeks," she admits, a slight tremor in her voice. I squeeze her hand, unable to stop the smile spreading across my face. "Me too." The rest of the evening passes in a blur of soft conversations and stolen glances. When Amber finally leaves, the workshop feels different somehow. No longer just my private sanctuary, but a space filled with new possibilities. That night, lying in bed, I replay the kiss in my mind. My fingers trace my lips, still tingling from her touch. Tomorrow we have another driving lesson scheduled, but somehow I know we'll be learning about much more than parallel parking. "Are you sure about these measurements?" Amber leans over my workbench, studying the miniature facade I'm crafting for her latest restoration project. The Victorian mansion she's renovating has become our shared obsession over the past few weeks. "Down to the millimeter," I assure her, carefully applying tiny pieces of aged wood to the scale model. "Though I still can't believe you're trusting me with this. It's your biggest project yet." She straightens up, stretching her back. "Who better to trust? Your attention to detail is exactly what I need to convince the Historical Society about my vision for the renovations. I've been working late into the evening, trying to perfect every detail of this model." Amber's been stopping by after her site visits, bringing coffee and her expertise. Tonight, she's wearing her work clothes, fitted jeans and a simple white shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms marked with pencil measurements and notes. "Look at this," she says, pulling out her phone to show me pictures from today's work. "We found original crown molding hidden behind the drop ceiling. The pattern matches perfectly with what you've recreated here." I lean closer to see the screen, and her familiar scent, sawdust and something floral, fills my senses. Our shoulders touch, and neither of us moves away. These casual touches have become more frequent lately, each one sending little sparks through my body. The weather forecast had warned of thunderstorms, but we're both startled when the first crack of lightning illuminates the workshop through its small windows. The thunder follows immediately, and suddenly we're plunged into darkness as the power goes out. "Don't move," I say, reaching for my phone. "There's a lot of sharp tools around." "Wouldn't dream of it," Amber replies, her voice closer than I expected. The blue light from my phone screen casts shadows across her face as I turn it on. I know there are emergency candles somewhere, but finding them proves challenging. As I rummage through drawers, Amber's phone joins mine in illuminating the space, creating an intimate pool of light around us. You know, she says thoughtfully, this reminds me of the time I got stuck in the mansion's attic during an inspection. Except then I was alone, and it was significantly creepier. I locate the candles and matches, and soon the workshop is bathed in a warm, flickering light. The storm rages outside, rain hammering against the roof. Water starts seeping under the door, and we scramble to protect the miniatures with plastic sheets. In the chaos of securing my works in progress, we end up pressed against each other in the narrow space between workbenches. The candlelight plays across Amber's features, softening them. A drop of water from her damp hair trails down her neck. What happens next feels as natural as breathing. Our lips meet in the darkness, more urgent than our first kiss in this same workshop. Her hands find my waist, pulling me closer. The thunder outside fades to background noise as we lose ourselves in each other. Later, much later, we lie tangled together on the old couch I keep in the corner for late-night work sessions. The storm has passed, but the power remains out. Candlelight flickers across the ceiling as Amber traces patterns on my bare shoulder. I should probably check on the mansion, she murmurs against my hair. Make sure the site is secure after the storm. Probably, I agree, making no move to let her go. She chuckles, the sound vibrating through her chest where my head rests. 5 more minutes? 5 more minutes, I echo, knowing it will be longer. When the power finally returns, it feels like breaking a spell. We reluctantly separate straightening clothes and hair. The miniature facade on my workbench catches the restored light, its tiny windows gleaming. I'll need to seal these windows better, I say, examining the model for water damage. Can't have our hard work ruined by a little rain. Amber wraps her arms around me from behind, resting her chin on my shoulder. Our hard work, huh? Well, you're here often enough to claim partial ownership, I reply, leaning back into her embrace. I like the sound of that, she whispers, pressing a kiss to my neck before stepping away to gather her things. As I watch her leave, I realize the miniature mansion isn't the only thing being carefully, lovingly restored in this workshop. Something else is being built here too, piece by piece, detail by detail. And like all the best restorations, it's happening naturally, inevitably, as if it was always meant to be this way. I'm sitting cross-legged on my workshop floor, surrounded by miniature pieces, when the memories hit me like a tidal wave. The tiny furniture I'm arranging reminds me of the dollhouse Sarah gave me before she left, 3 years ago, but it still stings. The sound of Amber's boots on the gravel outside pulls me from my thoughts. She's been coming by every evening since the thunderstorm, but tonight, she finds me in this vulnerable state. Leslie? Her voice is soft as she takes in the scene, me on the floor, surrounded by half-finished projects, trying to hide the tears I didn't realize were falling. It's nothing, I say automatically, but Amber knows better. She sits beside me, close enough that our shoulders touch, but not pushing for more. Tell me about her, she says simply. I haven't talked about Sarah to anyone, not really. But here, in the safety of my workshop with Amber's steady presence beside me, the words start flowing. I tell her about the 3 years Sarah and I spent together, how she always promised to stay but was always looking toward the next big city, the next opportunity. How the dollhouse was her parting gift, a miniature version of the home we'd planned to build together. Amber listens without interrupting, her hand finding mine in the growing darkness. When I finally fall silent, she squeezes my fingers gently. Thank you for sharing that with me, she says, and for trusting me enough to let me see this part of you. I didn't mean to dump all this on you, I start, but she shakes her head. That's not how this works, she says firmly. You get all of me, I get all of you, including the hard parts. Her words wrap around me like a warm blanket. We sit in comfortable silence as the workshop grows darker, the setting sun painting the walls in shades of orange and purple. You know what you need? Amber says suddenly, standing and pulling me up with her. A change of scenery. Pack a bag. We're going on a road trip. Now? It's almost dark. Perfect timing. Trust me? 2 hours later, we're driving along the coast, windows down despite the chilly air. Amber's behind the wheel. My confidence in night driving isn't quite there yet. The ocean spreads out beside us, black and infinite under the stars. We end up in a small coastal town, checking into a quaint bed and breakfast well past midnight. The owner, an elderly woman in a floral robe, doesn't bat an eye at our late arrival or our lack of luggage beyond my hastily packed overnight bag. Our room faces the ocean, and we leave the windows open to let in the sound of the waves. Amber pulls me onto the small balcony, wrapping her arms around me from behind. "Thank you," I whisper, leaning back against her. "For what?" "For knowing exactly what I needed. For not trying to fix everything. For just being here." She turns me in her arms, and when she kisses me, it's different from our previous kisses. It's slower, deeper, filled with understanding and promise. The ocean breeze carries away the last of my tears, and I feel something shift inside me, like the final piece of a miniature scene clicking perfectly into place. We spend the weekend exploring the tiny town, walking on the beach, eating at local diners. Amber tells me about her own past relationships, the lessons learned, the hearts mended. In a small art gallery, we find a collection of miniature seascapes that make me itch to get back to my workshop. But this time, the creative urge isn't about escaping pain. It's about capturing joy. On Sunday afternoon, as we're driving back to Stockton, Amber reaches over and takes my hand. "You know," she says, "sometimes the best things in life come after we think we've lost everything." I look at her profile against the setting sun, at our intertwined fingers resting on the console, and I know she's right. The past doesn't disappear. It becomes part of our foundation, like the layers of history in Amber's beloved old buildings, but it's what we build on top that matters. Back in my workshop that evening, I look at Sarah's dollhouse with new eyes. Instead of pain, I feel gratitude for the lessons learned, for the strength gained, for the woman who knows exactly when to hold me close, and when to give me space to breathe. I pick up my tools and begin working on a new miniature scene, a tiny coastal town under a star-filled sky. The clock on my workshop wall shows midnight, but neither Amber nor I are ready to call it a day. An empty wine bottle sits between us on the floor, and a second one's halfway there. The miniature mansion project is finally complete, and we're celebrating. I still can't believe how the Historical Society practically fell over themselves approving the renovation plans, Amber says, leaning back against the wall. "Your model sealed the deal." "Our model," I correct her, taking another sip of wine. "I couldn't have done it without your expertise." She slides closer until our shoulders touch. "You know what I've been thinking about lately?" "Remember that old speakeasy we found in the mansion's basement during the renovation? The hidden room behind the fake wall?" I nod, recalling the excitement in her eyes when she discovered the secret space, complete with century-old bottles and a dusty bar. "What if we did something like that?" Her voice takes on that dreamy quality it gets when she's onto something big. Not the illegal booze part, obviously, but a bar with that same atmosphere. Something different for Stockton. The wine makes everything feel possible, and I find myself caught up in her enthusiasm. "Tell me more." "We could call it the Stockton Speakeasy. You could design the interior, all those beautiful Art Deco details you love. I know the perfect location too. That empty building on Mason Street, the owner's been trying to sell for months." I sit up straighter, my mind already racing with possibilities. "The one with the original tin ceiling?" "Exactly. We could restore it, make it something special. A place where everyone feels welcome, you know?" We spend the next few hours sketching ideas on scraps of paper, our hands constantly brushing as we pass the wine back and forth. By the time sunrise starts painting the workshop walls pink, we have a business plan scrawled across dozen sheets. The next few weeks pass in a whirlwind of meetings, paperwork, and renovations. Amber handles the structural work while I focus on the interior design. We pour our savings into the project, working late into the night. The building transforms under our hands, just like the mansion did. Opening night arrives faster than seems possible. I'm adjusting the last of the Art Deco light fixtures when Amber appears behind me in a vintage-style dress that makes my breath catch. "Ready?" she asks, offering me her hand. The bar fills quickly, curious locals, friends, even some of the Historical Society members who approved Amber's mansion renovation. The atmosphere is exactly what we dreamed of that wine-soaked night, intimate, elegant, with just a hint of mystery. In a quiet moment between greeting guests, Amber pulls me into the small office we created behind the bar. "I have something for you," she says, producing a small box. Inside is a perfect miniature replica of the Stockton Speakeasy, complete with tiny patrons and a diminutive version of us behind the bar. "When did you?" I start, but my words are cut off by her kiss. "I had some help from your workshop assistant," she murmurs against my lips. "Consider it a partnership gift." The word partnership sends a warm thrill through me. We're more than business partners now, more than girlfriends even. We're building something together, piece by piece, just like my miniatures. The sound of laughter and music drifts through the door, reminding us we have a bar full of guests to attend to. But before we return, Amber pulls me close one more time. "You know what makes this better than a real speakeasy?" she whispers. "What's that?" "We don't have to hide anything." Back in the bar, watching Amber charm our guests while I mix drinks, I think about how far we've come from those first driving lessons. Who would have thought that parallel parking practice would lead to this? But then again, the best journeys often take unexpected turns. The miniature speakeasy sits proudly on our office shelf, a tiny testament to big dreams. And as I catch Amber's eye across the crowded room, her smile bright and promising, I know we're just getting started. Something feels off tonight at the Stockton Speakeasy. I'm behind the bar, mixing an old-fashioned, when I notice them, 3 men in expensive suits who don't quite fit with our usual crowd. They're sitting in the corner booth, barely touching their drinks, watching everything with calculating eyes. "You see them too?" Amber murmurs as she passes behind me, restocking glasses. Her casual tone doesn't match the tension in her shoulders. "Hard to miss," I reply, keeping my voice low. "Third night this week we've had visitors like that. The men in suits aren't our only unusual patrons lately. There's been a steady trickle of people who seem more interested in watching than drinking or socializing. They come in small groups, speak in hushed tones, and leave without finishing their drinks." Later that night, after closing, Amber and I are counting the register when we hear a knock at the service entrance. It's Marcus, my brother, looking unusually serious in his police uniform. "You two need to be careful," he says without preamble. "Word on the street is the Castillo family's been asking questions about this place." I feel the color drain from my face. Everyone in Stockton knows about the Castillos, the family that doesn't officially exist but somehow owns half the city's real estate. "Why would they care about us?" Amber asks, but I can tell from her expression that she's already connecting the dots. Our location, our sudden success, our growing clientele, we're becoming noticeable. Marcus runs a hand through his hair, a nervous habit from childhood. "Just watch your backs, okay? And call me if anything feels wrong." After he leaves, Amber and I do a final walkthrough of the bar. Everything looks normal, but now we're seeing it through different eyes. The antique mirrors we restored could be hiding cameras. The storage room could be perfect for illegal merchandise. Our beautiful bar, our dream, suddenly feels vulnerable. The next morning, I'm unlocking the front door when I find the envelope. No stamp, no return address, just our names written in flowing script. Inside is a simple note. Consider this a friendly warning. The Castillo family would like to discuss business arrangements. Amber reads it over my shoulder, her hand finding mine and squeezing tight. "We should call Marcus." "And tell him what? We've got a polite note?" I crumple the paper in my fist. "We haven't done anything wrong." But that night, more suits appear. They order expensive drinks and leave large tips, but their presence feels like a weight pressing down on the whole room. Our regular customers start to notice, their easy laughter becoming more forced. A week later, we find another envelope, this one containing photographs. Me opening the bar in the morning, Amber at her restoration site, us having dinner at our favorite restaurant. The message is clear, they're watching. "We're not going to let them intimidate us," Amber says firmly, but I can hear the worry in her voice. "We've poured everything into this place, our savings, our dreams, our future." The final straw comes when one of our regulars, an elderly gentleman who's been coming in since opening night, pulls me aside. "Be careful," he whispers. "Last place that refused the Castillo's protection had an electrical fire. Such a shame, historic building too." That night, after everyone's gone, Amber and I sit in our office, staring at the miniature speakeasy on the shelf. It looks so perfect, so innocent, exactly what we dreamed of creating. Maybe we should have stuck to driving lessons, I joke weakly. Amber takes my hand, her grip firm and grounding. No. We built this place because Stockton needed it, because we needed it. We're not letting anyone take that away. But as we lock up that night, double-checking every window and door, we both know things have changed. Our cozy bar has somehow become a piece in a game we never meant to play. And from the looks of it, the other players don't plan to play fair. The security system beeps as we set it, and I catch our reflection in the window. Two women who just wanted to create something beautiful, now standing guard over it like soldiers. The irony isn't lost on me. We've created our own speakeasy, complete with the danger that made the original ones infamous. The morning sun hasn't risen yet when my phone buzzes with a text from Marcus. Check your email, now. I'm already at the workshop, working on a commission to keep my mind off our troubles with the Castillos. Amber's asleep on the small couch, having crashed here after another late night at the bar. Opening my laptop, I find an email from an anonymous address containing a single PDF file. Protection fees due, $5,000 monthly, cash only. First payment expected by Friday. My hands shake as I wake Amber. She reads the email, her face hardening into something I've never seen before. They're getting impatient, she says, running a hand through her sleep-mussed hair. We can't afford that kind of money, I say, though we both know that's not the point. It's never been about money. We're discussing our options over coffee when my phone rings again. This time it's our day manager, her voice trembling. Someone broke into the workshop last night. You need to come see this. The destruction is methodical, almost artistic in its thoroughness. My workbenches are overturned, tools scattered across the floor. But what hurts most are my miniatures, dozens of them, representing months of work smashed beyond repair. The tiny speakeasy model lies in pieces, its miniature patrons scattered like casualties of war. Amber surveys the damage, her face a mask of controlled fury. This is their answer to our silence, she says, picking up a broken piece of the speakeasy model. They're escalating. Marcus arrives with two other officers, but we all know nothing will come of the official investigation. The Castillos are too careful, too connected. He pulls me aside while the others take photos. There's talk, he murmurs, about other businesses in the area, all facing similar pressure. Some are considering fighting back, but they need somewhere safe to meet, to organize. I look at Amber, who's helping document the damage, and see the same determination in her eyes that I feel building in my chest. We didn't create the Stockton Speakeasy to become another pawn in someone else's game. That evening, while cleaning up the workshop, Amber suddenly straightens. You know what the real speakeasies were for, right? They weren't just about alcohol, they were about resistance, about creating safe spaces when the world wouldn't allow them. I see where she's going with this. You want to take them on, the whole Castillo operation? Not directly, she says, that familiar glint of planning in her eyes. But we have something they don't expect: legitimacy, a clean business, community support, and now, a reason to fight back. Later that night, Amber does something that surprises me. She walks straight up to the suited men who've taken up their usual corner booth. I watch from behind the bar, my heart in my throat, as she pulls up a chair and sits down. I can't hear what she says, but her body language is clear, straight-backed, unflinching, determined. The men's faces darken, then show something that looks almost like respect. When Amber returns to the bar, her hands are steady as she pours herself a drink. What did you tell them? I ask. The truth, she says simply. That if anything happens to our bar, our workshop, or anyone we care about, every piece of documentation we have about their operations goes public. And we have a lot of documentation. We do? She smiles grimly. We will. Marcus isn't the only one with connections in this town. The Castillos didn't build their empire by being liked, they did it by being feared. And fear creates enemies. The suited men leave shortly after, their departure marked by subtle nods in our direction. It's not a victory, not yet, but it's a declaration of war. They wanted to intimidate us, but they've only succeeded in making us dangerous. That night, as we close up, I start gathering the broken pieces of my miniatures. But Amber stops me. Leave them, she says softly. Let them remind us what we're fighting for. We lock up and step into the cool night air, our hands finding each other automatically. The street is quiet, but we both know it's the silence before a storm. We've chosen our path now. There's no turning back. Looking at our reflection in the bar's window, I see what the Castillos probably don't. Two women who've built something worth protecting, who know how to create beauty from broken things, and who aren't afraid to fight for what's theirs. Detective Sarah Allen doesn't look like someone who could make hardened criminals nervous, but appearances can be deceiving. She sits at our bar after hours, reviewing the evidence we've gathered against the Castillo family. "This is good," she says, spreading photographs across the polished wood. "Very good, but we need more." Over the past month, we've been carefully documenting everything. The threatening notes, the protection money demands, the surveillance photos they sent us. But more importantly, we've been gathering our own intelligence. "The other business owners are ready to talk," Amber says, sliding another folder across the bar. "Mario from the Italian restaurant, Lisa from the boutique, even old Mr. Chen from the electronics store. They're all willing to testify. I've been working on something too, a detailed scale model of the neighborhood, marking every business affected by the Castillos' operations. Each tiny storefront tells a story of intimidation and fear. It's evidence made tangible, three-dimensional proof of their empire of extortion. The key, Sarah explains, is connecting them directly to the threats. They're careful about using intermediaries. That's when one of our new regulars speaks up from the end of the bar. James, owner of the coffee shop down the street, has been quietly nursing a whiskey while we talked. "I might have something that could help." He pulls out his phone, showing us security footage from his store. The video clearly shows one of the suited men who've been watching our bar accepting an envelope from another shop owner. "I installed new cameras last week. High resolution, with audio." Sarah's eyes light up as she watches the footage. "This is exactly what we need. How many other businesses have security systems?" "Most of us," Amber says. "It was one of the first things we discussed when we started meeting here. Everyone's been gathering evidence, just waiting for the right moment." The detective nods approvingly. "Keep this quiet, keep collecting evidence, and most importantly, keep acting normal. We don't want them getting suspicious." After Sarah leaves, Amber and I stay to clean up. The night feels heavy with possibility and danger. We're making progress, but we're also playing a dangerous game. "Come here," Amber says suddenly, pulling me away from the bar and into her arms. We sway slightly to the faint music still playing through the speakers. "Remember when this place was just going to be a simple bar?" I laugh softly against her shoulder. "Nothing's ever simple with us." She pulls back just enough to look at me, her eyes serious. "Are you scared?" "Terrified," I admit. But not enough to stop. Her kiss is fierce and protective, filled with all the words we're too cautious to say out loud these days. When we break apart, we're both breathing heavily. Later that night, in the safety of my workshop, we map out our next moves. The model of the neighborhood sits between us, each building representing another potential ally in our fight against the Castillos. "We need to be strategic," Amber says, marking locations on the miniature streets. "Each business that joins us increases our strength, but also our vulnerability." I nod, adding tiny lights to the model, making it glow like a constellation of resistance. We're stronger together than apart. That's what they never expected. The night deepens around us as we work, planning and preparing. Outside, the city sleeps, unaware of the war being quietly waged in its streets. But here in my workshop, surrounded by the tools of my trade and the woman I love, I feel something stronger than fear. The Castillos thought they could intimidate us because we're just two women who dared to build something beautiful. They didn't realize that's exactly what makes us dangerous. We know how to create, how to restore, how to build communities, and now we're using those same skills to dismantle their empire, piece by careful piece. Dawn is breaking when we finally head home, leaving the glowing model as a reminder of what we're fighting for. In a few hours, we'll open the bar like normal, serve drinks, smile at customers. But beneath that ordinary surface, the wheels we've set in motion continue to turn. The game has changed. We're no longer just defending our own business. We're leading a quiet revolution, armed with security footage and solidarity, building permits and brave allies. And somewhere in the city, the Castillos are about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous adversaries are the ones they underestimated. The anonymous tip to the FBI goes out at exactly 9 p.m. on a Friday night. Detective Sarah Allen's timing is perfect. The bar is packed, providing us with dozens of witnesses for whatever happens next. I'm behind the bar when I see them coming, not the usual suited thugs, but a wave of federal agents moving with practiced precision. They flow through the front door and the kitchen entrance simultaneously, badges raised. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm and stay where you are," a senior agent announces. The music cuts off, replaced by the sound of chairs scraping as people turn to watch. Amber catches my eye from across the room. We've planned for this moment for weeks, but the reality is still surreal. Our regular customers, the ones who've been part of our resistance, maintain perfect poker faces. The rest look appropriately confused. The raid is surgical and swift. The Castillo family's representatives, who've been watching us from their usual corner booth, find themselves professionally escorted outside. Through the windows, we can see more arrests happening at other businesses along the street. Detective Allen appears at my side, speaking quietly. Teams are hitting 17 locations simultaneously. We've got their whole operation. The next few hours pass in a blur of statements and documentation. Our customers are interviewed and released in groups. Many of them, we now learn, have been gathering their own evidence all along. The community we helped build had grown stronger than even we realized. By midnight, the bar is nearly empty except for law enforcement. I'm exhausted but unable to leave, watching as they photograph and document everything. Amber handles most of the questions. She's always been better at the official stuff. "Ms. Murphy?" A young agent approaches with my laptop. "We've finished copying the surveillance footage. Your documentation was invaluable." I think about all the nights spent organizing digital files, creating backups, building that detailed neighborhood model that now sits in an evidence locker, just doing what needed to be done. Around 2 a.m., they finally clear us to close up. The street outside is still buzzing with activity. News vans have started arriving, their lights creating weird shadows through our Art Deco windows. "You should see this," Amber says, pulling up a news site on her phone. The headline reads, "Major crime family operation dismantled in Stockton, local business owners credited with breaking case." The article doesn't name us directly. Sarah made sure of that for our safety, but it mentions a local establishment that became the heart of the resistance. There's a photo of our bar's facade, the vintage lights glowing warmly against the night sky. We're locking up when Marcus arrives, still in his uniform despite the late hour. "You two okay?" "We're fine," I assure him, though my hands are still shaking slightly as I set the alarm. "Is it really over?" He nods grimly. The Castillos' lawyer is already trying to make deals, but with the evidence we have, they're done in Stockton. Amber slides her arm around my waist as we walk to the car, both of us too wired to sleep despite our exhaustion. "Remember when I said our bar should be something different for Stockton?" I laugh, the sound carrying in the quiet street. "Pretty sure this wasn't what you had in mind." "No," she agrees, pulling me closer. "It's better. We didn't just create a safe space, we helped make the whole neighborhood safer." At home, we watch the sunrise from our bedroom window, the city slowly waking up to its first morning free of the Castillos' shadow. My phone keeps buzzing with messages from other business owners, sharing their relief and gratitude. "What happens now?" I ask, curled against Amber's side. She kisses my temple softly. "Now, we go back to running our bar, making drinks, creating community, living our lives, just without the constant fear." It sounds simple when she says it like that, but we both know nothing will be quite the same. We've seen what this community is capable of when it stands together. We've learned our own strength. As the morning light fills the room, I think about the miniature speakeasy still sitting in pieces in my workshop. Maybe it's time to rebuild it, not as it was, but as something new. Something that tells the story of not just our bar, but of an entire community that refused to be intimidated into silence. The media attention hits like a tidal wave. Every news outlet in Northern California wants to tell the story of how a group of small business owners brought down the Castillo empire. Our phones won't stop ringing, and reporters camp outside the bar hoping for interviews. "You should see this," Amber says one morning, sliding her tablet across our kitchen counter. The headline reads, "Stockton Speakeasy, How a Local Bar Became Ground Zero for Criminal Empire's Downfall." The article is surprisingly accurate, though it makes us sound more heroic than we feel. There's even a mention of my miniature neighborhood model, which the FBI is apparently keeping as evidence of innovative intelligence gathering. The publicity has an unexpected effect on business. The bar is packed every night, with people driving from as far as San Francisco to see the place where it all happened. Our regulars, the ones who stood with us through everything, help us manage the crush of newcomers. Table 3 wants to know if that's really the booth where you confronted the Castillo men, our new server tells Amber, who just laughs and shakes her head. Tell them every booth has a story, she says, but the best ones are still being written. We're adapting to our new normal when Detective Allen stops by with unexpected news. The DA's office wants to use your bar for the press conference announcing the indictments. Thought you should hear it from me first. I look at Amber, seeing my own mix of emotions reflected in her eyes. Our little bar has already become more than we ever imagined. Why not add one more chapter to its story? The press conference brings another wave of attention, but this time it feels different. The cameras capture not just our bar, but the entire community that made this possible. Mario from the Italian restaurant, Lisa from the boutique, Mr. Chen from the electronics store, they're all there, standing together. After the reporters leave, we hold an impromptu celebration. The bar fills with familiar faces, not curious outsiders, but the people who helped make this happen. Someone starts playing jazz on our vintage jukebox, and the tension of the past months finally begins to melt away. We need a break, Amber whispers in my ear as we watch our friends dancing. Just us. That's how we end up at the coast again, in the same small town where we escaped to months ago. The same bed and breakfast, the same ocean view, but everything else has changed. We spend days walking on the beach, sleeping late, not thinking about bars or criminal empires. I sketch new miniature ideas while Amber reads architecture magazines, planning future restorations. We talk about everything and nothing. One evening, watching the sunset from our balcony, Amber brings up something we've both been avoiding. The bar's going to be different now. Are you okay with that? I think about it. About how our simple dream evolved into something bigger than ourselves. I think that's how it should be. Places grow and change, just like people do. She pulls me closer, and we stand in comfortable silence as the sky turns from orange to purple to navy. The ocean breeze carries away the last of our stress, the persistent tension we've been carrying for months. Back in Stockton, we find the community has grown stronger in our absence. Our staff has handled everything perfectly, and the bar has settled into a new rhythm. The curious onlookers have been replaced by genuine patrons, people who come for the atmosphere and stay for the sense of connection. Late one night, after closing, I find Amber in my workshop. She's looking at the pieces of the original speakeasy model, still scattered where the vandals left them. We should rebuild it, she says, carefully picking up a tiny chair. Not exactly the same, but better. Something that shows what this place has become. I wrap my arms around her waist, resting my chin on her shoulder. A testament to resistance, to community, to us, she says simply, turning to kiss me. To everything we built together. Outside, the city sleeps peacefully, free from the shadow that once loomed over it. And in my workshop, surrounded by broken pieces waiting to be made whole again, we start planning our next chapter. 6 months after the Castillo takedown, the Stockton Speakeasy has evolved into something we never imagined. The bar has become a symbol of community resistance, but more importantly, it's become a place where everyone feels welcome, exactly as we'd originally dreamed. Tonight's crowd is typical of our new normal local business owners mingling with artists, professionals sharing tables with craftspeople. The Art Deco details gleam in the warm lighting, and jazz music flows through the space like honey. I'm behind the bar, mixing drinks and watching Amber give a tour to some architecture students. She's explaining how we restored the tin ceiling, her hands moving expressively as she points out various historical features. The students are captivated, not just by the architecture, but by the story of how this place became what it is. Your usual? I ask Mr. Chen as he takes his regular seat at the bar. He nods, smiling. His electronics store is thriving now, free from the burden of protection payments. Like many of our allies from those difficult days, he's become family. Amber finishes her tour and makes her way to the bar, her eyes sparkling with that look that still makes my heart skip. I have a surprise for you, she says, taking my hand. Can you step away for a minute? She leads me to my workshop, which has been restored and expanded since the vandalism. But something's different tonight. The space is filled with tiny lights, and in the center stands a new display case. Inside is a miniature scene I've never seen before, a perfect replica of our bar, but not just as it is now. It shows snippets of our entire journey, the driving school where we met, the Victorian mansion we restored, the night of the raid, all captured in exquisite detail. How did you? I start, but then I notice the other people emerging from the shadows. Marcus, Detective Allen, our staff, all the business owners who stood with us, they're all here grinning. Had some help, Amber says softly. Turns out I'm not the only one who appreciates miniature art. She turns me away from the display, taking both my hands in hers. Leslie Murphy, you once told me that the best things in life come after we think we've lost everything. You were right. But the best things also come when we're brave enough to build something new. My heart stops as she drops to one knee, pulling out a small box. Inside isn't a traditional ring, but a tiny, perfect key. This is a replica of the first key to our bar, she explains, her voice trembling slightly, because that's when our real story began, and I want to keep building that story with you, every day for the rest of our lives. The workshop erupts in cheers as I pull her up into a kiss, whispering yes against her lips. The tiny key fits perfectly on a delicate chain around my neck, right above my heart. Later, after our friends have gone and the bar is quiet, we sit at our favorite booth. The miniature display has been moved to a place of honor behind the bar, telling our story to anyone who wants to listen. What happens now? Amber asks, echoing my question from months ago. I look around at our bar, at the space we've created and fought for, at the woman who's become my partner in every way that matters. Now we keep building, together. She leans in to kiss me, and I can feel her smile against my lips. Outside, Stockton continues its peaceful night, and inside our speakeasy, we're writing the next chapter of our story. It's not the ending we expected when we met in that driving school. It's better. The tiny key warms against my skin, a constant reminder that sometimes the biggest adventures start with the smallest details. And as Amber pulls me closer, I know that whatever comes next, we'll face it together, building our future one perfect moment at a time.